Also in '93, we established a junior daughter of the king, and we had 6 or 7 young women who were being sort of nurtured in that spiritual response to life through the daughters of the king. EFM started in 1994, and also in about 96, again, this proposal is another initiative. How about a school? So for 2 or 3 years, there was a lot of activity in thinking about a private school, an independent private school, sort of a vision. That didn't bear fruit, but it took some energy and thought about us doing that. In 2001, we started a parochial mission, or another proposal to start a parochial mission in Hill City. I particularly wanted that to happen. We didn't get the kind of support from the diocese as I was hoping, but we spent a lot of time thinking about how to set that up. Our curate at the time, Ann Barton, was sent off to a program in Texas about planting churches and came back with all kinds of good ideas and a way of doing that. But again, there was some energy about, well, let's expand, let's do things beyond our borders and our walls here. 2000, we started the parish nursing program, one Vicky Sweet and others who thought, we could, wellness ministry for us, and I thought that was I think it's a really good program. 2000, again, in the vein of the LAMP program, we thought let's have yoke with a parish in the reservation, and we did that with St. Peter's, Ogallala. Sylvan Hoff was behind that, and let's do things together and support them. They need our help, and we can do that. We have resources to help. We had that wonderful Habitat for Humanity program that we didn't. Some of the members of the congregation were already involved in that, but we wanted to do that as a Emmanuel parish. And Barry Jones said, let's do it for Walter. That was wonderful. So this was the Walter Jones house, and a lot of you were there, feeding folks, hammering nails into wood, sort of. And we built a house named Walter Jones. And I guess this goes beyond the 90s, but there was, in my mind, we had a wonderful person, Ruth Yellowhawk. She was known internationally as well as nationally for her work in Native American issues and reconciliation. She lived here in Rapid City. She died a number of years ago, but she went all over the world doing that, and she had a film forum which presented documentary programs about issues, current social issues, but did it in a Native American talking circle style. That was really interesting. I was disappointed that we didn't engage that, or members of the congregation engaged that as much as we could have. I would have liked it, but I came. We'd sit in a circle and you'd pass the talking stick around, and you could only talk when you got it, to respond to whatever the issue was in the film. That was hard for me and most of us here. We all wanted our discussions, everybody's talking at the same time. You had to wait. And then you had to speak your piece, and then you had to listen to everybody. I thought that was just a wonderful program as well. During the late 90s, we had a pastoral care program, the sort of, I think we call it the Shepherds program. What's that? Where we paired people with shut-ins. Instead of just visiting, we would find volunteers, and the program was you were paired with somebody, and you had to make 4 contacts during the month. 2 had to be face-to-face, and the other 2 could be a call or an email or a letter or something like that. And once a month bring communion. And we had a number of people paired with our shut-ins, and for those people participating in that, it was a really heart-warming and expanding program. They became attached to these people, and those people who were visited really felt the presence of the church through these individuals. And of course, this isn't even to mention all the educational programs we had going on. Sunday school, youth group, confirmation. We had a period of time where we set up the rooms downstairs at various learning centers. We had this gathering space that looked like an Arabian sheep tent or something. And then we had the movie theater. Larson found some theater chairs somewhere and set that up as the movie, and a computer center, and a puppet center, and there's great puppets, and an art center, and you know, they would learn things through these various learning areas. Jan Dowling did a lot of work in her family to set that up, and her husband Phil also has passed away. He did a lot of the building of those rooms, and her daughter Dee Dee did the murals on the wall that are still there, welcoming sort of characters that kids would go down and be involved in. But we had all kinds of forum programs, and I know Donna is still doing this Sunday morning forum, and special programs during seasonal things that were organized and arranged by Janice Baldwin, who was our DRE at the time. She was very capable. All kinds of programs going on at the parish. So it was a period of expansion and programs. People seemed to have a lot of energy to do that. Of course, to do that, we needed an expanded staff, and that was considered during the 90s, and to help support and give leadership to the programs that we were doing during the 90s. Again, these are just a few of the people who were sort of more on staff rather than volunteers, who were responsible either to the rector who oversaw a particular program, other than the chairpersons of the committees. We'd have a chairperson we had a DRE that oversaw the whole educational program. We had a church school superintendent, a youth group director, and so forth and so on. Joe Hadeen was, in 1990, was appointed one of the youth directors. A number of youth directors. They burned out pretty quickly. You know, it's a lot of work. But we had some excellent youth directors during the 90s. We hired in 1990, as part of our vision to expand, a full-time DRE, Janice Baldwin. She was trained in Christian education and formation. She was amazing. You could go to her and say, Janice, let's do a program of Tibetan Christian relationships in the 18th century with a focus on the music that came out. She'd have it the next day. How did she find this stuff? I don't know where she found this stuff. She was very capable, and in her first year here, she was appointed by the National Church as the coordinator for Province 6 Christian formation for the 7 dioceses in Province 6. Donna Fowdy was our deacon at the time. She left a couple of years later. John Davis was part-time parish administrator. He had a lot of administrative skills and would kind of oversee that. Don Dickinson was appointed the treasurer. These all happened in 1990. And then 93, Reva Kurtz, who was appointed the treasurer. Mary Olson. I only say this. It's not an expansion, but Mary Olson resigned as the parish secretary. She'd been parish secretary for, all the rest of the century before that. Yeah, of course, still. These personal remarks. I always thought if everyone gave as much time to the parish as Mary Olson, we would do anything we could. She was here morning, noon, and night. Doors were open. Mary was here. Where is she? Okay. Let's see. During 1994, I took a sabbatical, and we had Bob Lambert as the interim priest, and John Davis as the administrative officer at that time. Don Dickinson died in 1995. God bless him. Janice Baldwin left in 1995. But Pamela Barnett came later in the 90s, and she was a person who came in, and I never laid eyes on her. She made an appointment. She introduced herself. She talked, and she said, "Well, I'm relocating here. I think I want to be a part of the church. And by the way, I have a master's in spiritual direction. Would that be of any use here?" Drool. So she set up her program to revive her studies, and was a spiritual spiritual director for a number of the members of this congregation. She started some programs. In 1999, near the end of the century, we needed more clergy help here. We hired Ann Barton, crazy, lovable Ann Barton, and she was in charge of a number of things and did some programs and had her interest in expanding the kind of ministry that was here. She was a lot of fun. It was her first place. No, her second place. She was on a mission before. And then also I consider on the staff. This is absolutely unique to Emmanuel Parish. No other congregation in the Episcopal Church could have had this profile. Harold Jones was here. He was in town. What a wonderful connection to the history of the diocese and the Native American ministry. It was just the biggest Christian heart I knew. But he wanted to be involved. He just wanted to do. And he came to me again. I mean, all this just fell in my lap. He said, "Well, I'd like to go visit people. Is that okay?" Oh, yes. And I remember one of the first communions we took to a shut-in, and he came and I said, "Well, when you do it, and I'll introduce you." And I forget who it was. I think it was Viola Adams. But anyway, we were doing this home communion, and we came to the prayers of the people, and we're sitting in a little parlor in chairs, and I think it was Viola, and he said, "Let us pray." And he gets up and falls to his knees on the floor in the living room, and he goes, looks over at me. I fall on my knees. So filled with the Spirit. He visited people and brought the church to them. Anyway, he was here, and whenever he was in the congregation, and I knew he wanted to, he would give the final blessing. He'd stand. So he was here, and then who else shows up? Walter Jones, and I know you just talked about it. And Walter wanted to be employed here because of particular pension fund things. He was coming from Canada, and as you know, he was the Archbishop of Rupert's Land, wherever that is. It goes up to the North Pole, I know. So he came on, and another great, huge, caring heart. John Davis, by the way, would say, well, Walter couldn't organize himself out of a paper bag, but he was the most pastoral person here. Walter just loved it. He would come we'd have regular weekly staff meetings. Here's the Archbishop of Canada sitting right over here. We'd be yakking about all that. He never said a thing. He was so wise, He just wouldn't say a thing unless he was asked. I said, "Well, Walter, what do you think?" He said, "Well, I don't think that would be, or I think, and then he would give his opinion. And he visited people. Anyway, the unique thing, I never did this, but I really wanted to. On our letterhead, we had the Reverend Don Dickinson, who was deacon, or Joe Hadid, not Joe, Don Fowdy. We had the Reverend. We had the Reverend Deacon, so-and-so. Then we had our curate, the Reverend Deacon, then we have the curate, the Reverend Ann Barton. I was the dean of the deanery at the time, so I was the very Reverend. And then we had Harold Jones, whose title was the Right Reverend as a bishop. And Walter Jones, as the Archbishop, his title was the Most Reverend. Now, in the Episcopal Church, the only Most Reverend that we have is the presiding bishop. But the presiding bishop loses that title normally when he or she finishes his or her term. So it goes back to the Reverend. So the only Most Reverend that we would have in this country is somebody from another Anglican communion who was an archbishop or something. So Walter could retain that title. So we had the whole level, the Reverend Deacon, the Reverend, the Very Reverend, the Right Reverend, and the Most Reverend. I want to put that on the letterhead and send around all my place. What a gift they were in terms of the staff. Joe McMillan served later at the end of the decade as a part-time office administrator. Boy, she had lots of skills. And of course we had Jim Feisley and others Joanne Edstrom, the paid organist. How many years has she been doing that? When I got here, she'd been doing it for decades. Unbelievable. So we had a kind of sense of getting more people in here in terms of staff to help expand who we are. The worship, this gets a little trickier. I mean, in terms of expansion, it's hard to know somebody's heart in the worship if that was really meeting their needs. But we did all sorts of, we had a strong tradition of good liturgical practice here. The music was wonderful, and it was expected to do your best. You could just see it in lay readers and lectors and acolytes and choir. In my little church where I go in Montana, the choir kind of comes in. Some are vested, some aren't. They, they stand, they sit. Jim Pfeiffer. But Jim, I gotta say, was one of the best choir directors I ever knew, because he wanted it to be the best it could be, not for the performance sake. He had a Christian ministry. He said, this is to glorify God and to lead the congregation. But he wanted it to be the best it could possibly be. That's what ministry is about. Anyway, we had that, and in 1993 we started a Wednesday night service. We continued the 8 and 10 o'clock service on Sunday morning. We had we do now a Wednesday morning service followed by a Bible study. We have Thursday morning prayer meeting and Bible study at like 6 or something. I tried to kill that all through the decade. I said, oh, it's too early. I'd come here at about 6, and Bev Troll would have been here, I don't know, 5:30, and coffee's all made. And then we'd go to breakfast, and by that time I was waking up, and I would say something, well, how'd it go? I just couldn't kill those people off. They just we had handbells were given by John and Connie Vukorovich at the time, and we established a bell choir. That was lovely. Janice and the liturgical committee team had all kinds of special services during the seasonal things. Advent, Epiphany, Christmas, of course, all those Christmas pageants, Holy Week, Easter, Pentecost. We had a really interesting, and Janice came up with this Epiphany celebration. It was a celebration of light, which is the theme of Epiphany. And we had this thing where we would go to various places in the church, process with candles, and we had a marking over the portal about the 3 wise men. It was old tradition, their initials and the date. But one year we were doing this candlelight thing. We were at the baptismal font, the back of the church, entrance of the church. And it was solemn and lovely and dark and dramatic and smelling. So I looked over, and Debbie Strassel's hair was on fire. Pretty dramatic. We had all kinds of liturgical services, and I've got to say, this altar guild, there was never a single worship service, honest to goodness. I can never remember a single one that I didn't walk into this church and everything was immaculate and prepared and ready to go. And I was here almost 20 years. Never a service. And and there again, that ministry is one of the few committees, well, I shouldn't say that, but they would begin, when they would meet or begin their service, just the ordinary altar, have a prayer, dedicate themselves to the service of the altar. This sense of devotion of what they're doing, real sense about that. And we always have altar guild. I'd go to the altar guild meetings. They were wonderful. But the detail and the organization, every tiny little thing was covered and was thought about and prepared. And during those years, we had got new vestments and altar hangings, blue, red, white, green, and let me tell you, that was hotly debated every time, what it would be, how things would be set up. And I think the sign is still up in the altar guild. It says, "The altar guild is here forever, priests come and go." And again, I don't know if that expanded, but it continues strong and vibrant in that way. Also, and we did the needlepoint project. Those are gorgeous. Almost every woman in Watertown said, "I'll never do needlepoint in church again." They did it. What a big project. Wow.
And twice.
And twice, exactly. We had to do one of them or some of them.
They got thrown away by mistake.
Oh,
Remember?
Oh, that's right. I forget those sorts of things. I got to say a few things about the rector who's called here. It's just my involvement here. Of course, I was excited to be here. I never thought I'd be in Rapid City, South Dakota, but it was a wonderful time. I did the usual rector thing, you know, what Rich does, and retirement's great, I have to tell you. One of the things that the congregation thought was important, and I did too, is that I would be engaged in the community, just as we wanted the church to be, as an institution, engaged. We wanted the clergy to be engaged too. In that time, for my personal sense of that, and the congregation sense of expanding into the community, I was on the Community Theater Board and the I Institute, their Institutional Review Committee, Rapid City Arts Council, YMCA Spiritual Concerns Committee, their fundraisings, I was on the board, the Center for Restorative Justice and Peace, all of those boards. Again, because we wanted to be present in the community. I took 2 sabbaticals. Thank the congregation for that. They thought it was important, and so did I. They were wonderful times in my life. And we raised money and organized so that I could be gone two times for 6 months in my tenure here, after the first 6 years or 7 years and the next 7 years. One of the strangest things I was asked to do, by the way, as your rector, well, there were a lot of strange things. But when somebody came to me and said, "Why did you write President Bush, the father of President Bush?" Why? And this was in 1991. He said, "Well, he's coming, you know, to dedicate Mount Rushmore, some dedication, 50 years. And at the first dedication, Franklin Delano Roosevelt was here, as we all know, and there was a plaque on the pew. The president sat here. I'm sure that's exactly where he sat. She said, "Well, he's coming again. Why don't you write him a letter and invite him to worship in the mansion?" Which I did, and I wrote this clever little letter. And 50 years ago, we had a president who was Episcopalian. It was really good. And we invite you to come and worship. And, you know, we had a good Democrat there. We could put a Republican on the other side, you know, balance it off. You know. And I got a polite letter back, and his schedule didn't allow for that, but I did notice that Sunday morning he went fishing. I was going to do a follow-up letter, but during those years I was the chair of the standing committee of the diocese for 8 of those years, and as it happened, in 1992, our then Bishop Anderson resigned. And so it left the diocese without a bishop for about 2 years. And in that case, the standing committee is the ecclesiastical authority. Those were very busy years for your rector, because we met at least once a month in Pier, the chancellor of the diocese, the administrative officer, and I handled the matters, the ecclesiastical matters, and the treasurer and the administrator handled those things, and the chancellor handled legal issues and so forth. So I had a lot of duties during those about 2 years in that stead. During those years also, I was deputy to General Convention. I was a delegate to Province 6. We just did a lot. I was involved in the diocese a lot, which I liked, and I think that's a healthy thing. The diocese, of course, went through some changes, i.e. the change of ecclesiastical ministry. One of the great things that happened here in 1990, it was at the time the Executive Council of the Episcopal Church did once or twice a year meet out in the field, as it were, out from New York, and they came to the Diocese of South Dakota. They met at Christ Church Red Shirt Table, and they had big buses, and I was there to greet them with then Rector Bob Toodles, and here came the whole national executive committee out to not only South Dakota, but this tiny little congregation out in the Badlands. It was really fun. We went through an election of a new bishop. I was involved in the deanery. We had a very active deanery. We met once a month for clericus. And I'm running out of time. I know one other just category, we also had a vision to expand the use of this facility for the community. We wanted to bring people in the community to this place. And during those years, we had meeting here, AA, Al-Anon, Narcotics Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous, the Greeks. Church met here, the Symphony League, Women in Glow, Center for Restorative Justice, Church Women United, Church Response, Scottish Irish Society. We had to throw them out after a while. Toastmasters. And when I got here, I got to tell you, we had this hallway. And here was the church and the parish hall before the renovation. And I thought, this is the Anglican Church in spades, because on Wednesdays, I'd sit in my office right somewhere in the middle there, and from the church, the Greeks were there. And they would say in Greek Orthodox, you hear this ancient chanting and bells, and wonderful incense. I tried incense here, but it's great stuff. Anyway, so here's that filtering in on this side of me. And at the same time, women glows. Yeah. So they were, praise Jesus, amen, right, just hooping and hollering. And the smells from there were brownies, This is it. This is the Anglican Church. And then after that, Father Pappas was the name. And he'd come in, he's very, black. Would Father greet you, blessing upon you? Well, I'm bowing. He gives me strange Greek food. I don't know what it is. And then right after that, the Church of Glow Lake. Well, Father David, bless you. Jesus loves you. Yes, this is it. So it was a period of great expansion. Why don't they expand? Not only that, but people who came out of our church during that period to seek holy orders. We had 10 people, 9 of whom were ordained. Elizabeth Bryan, Rob Baldwin, Brad Hoff, Donna Creaming Brown, John Morton, Janice Baldwin, who was not ordained, but she was later, Paul Snavy, Joe Hadding, Kay Jennings, and Janice, she pursued that. Who were part of this congregation and felt a call to serve the large church. I was real proud of that. It was certainly a new century. By the time we got to 2000, we were huffing and puffing. I spent another 5-6 years here, and it was time to finish that. And a lot of that bled into it. We got new leadership, which was appropriate, and wanted to build on those, build on the strengths, and meet the challenges that were created at that time. There were a lot of difficulties and a lot of things to deal with. But by and large, it was a time of expansion for this congregation and kind of a spirit to do that. And I believe the congregations do that. They ride on a plateau, they build a kind of, pull that spring back, and then they shoot up some direction, some vision. And you hit a plateau, you rest a little bit, regain strength, and shoot up. And I believe and hope that this is a period of Emmanuel will continue its wonderful presence in Rapid City, the oldest church building with maybe some of the oldest congregants in the country. It's a great news. Well, thank you for a little snapshot of